Elon Musk could teach a rocket to land on fire, but he could not teach his own father how to say, "I am proud of you." That is the part people miss. They see the factories, the launches, the electric cars, the impossible deadlines, the strange interviews, the restless eyes, the man who seems unable to stop moving. They see a billionaire arguing with the world as if the world itself is a boardroom he refuses to leave. But underneath all that noise, there is a quieter story. A table, 2 chairs, a son who built everything he could imagine, and a father whose shadow still seemed to sit across from him. This is not a story about money. It is not even a story about success. It is about the kind of wound a man can carry into every room, even when that room is filled with applause. Imagine him older, already famous, already impossible to ignore, walking into a private family dinner after another headline, another victory, another machine the world said could not exist. The room is calm.
The plates are set. The conversation is careful. There is laughter somewhere, but not much of it reaches him. Across the table sits his father, Errol Musk, the man whose name is attached to childhood memories Elon rarely makes sound warm. For a moment, nobody speaks. Then Elon says, not loudly, "Did you see it?" His father looks up. "See what?" "The launch." A pause. "I saw people making too much of it," his father says. And there it is. Not a shout, not a dramatic insult. Something worse. A sentence small enough to fit under the skin and stay there. Elon looks down at the table. He has heard versions of that sentence before. Maybe not those exact words, maybe not in that exact room. But the feeling is familiar. The feeling of bringing something home and watching it be weighed, measured, corrected, reduced. The feeling of standing in front of a father and realizing that achievement is not the same thing as being seen. That is what makes this story so painful.
Because for some sons, the father is not just a man. He is the first judge, the first mirror, the first voice that tells you whether your hands are strong enough, whether your mind is sharp enough, whether you are worthy of being protected, praised, or loved. And when that voice becomes hard, a child does not simply stop listening. He listens harder. He listens for the sentence that never comes. In Elon's case, that missing sentence may have become a machine made of work, a machine made of risk, a machine made of sleepless nights, impossible promises, and a need to prove something so large that no ordinary proof would ever be enough. People often talk about Elon as if he was born running toward the future. But perhaps part of him was also running away from a house, away from a table, away from a father who could make a room feel colder without raising his voice. In South Africa, the boy who would one day speak of Mars was not yet a symbol of ambition. He was a child trying to understand why intelligence did not make life gentler. Books gave him worlds where rules were clear. Computers gave him a place where mistakes could be corrected. But family was different. Family did not reboot. Family did not follow code. Family could hurt you and then sit quietly at breakfast as if nothing had happened. And so a boy learned a dangerous lesson. If love would not arrive because he needed it, maybe respect would arrive because he earned it. Maybe if he became brilliant enough, rich enough, fearless enough, untouchable enough, the old voice would change. Maybe one day the father would look across a table and say the words the child had been waiting for. But some fathers do not know how to give what their sons spend a lifetime trying to receive, and some sons keep building anyway. That is the tragedy hidden beneath the triumph. Elon Musk did not simply want to win. Winning was too small.
He seemed to want to break the scale by which winning was measured. PayPal was not enough. Tesla was not enough. SpaceX was not enough. Each success looked from the outside like another mountain conquered. But inside a wound like this, mountains can become messages. Look now, look again. Tell me you see me. And still, somewhere deep inside, the boy was not standing on a launch pad or inside a board meeting. He was still hearing a chair scrape back from a table he could never quite join. The hardest thing about a father wound is that it rarely stays in childhood. It grows with the man. It changes clothes. It learns new language. At 20, it sounds like defiance. At 30, it sounds like ambition. At 40, it sounds like control. At 50, it may sound like, "We have to move faster," when what it really means is, "I cannot sit still with what I feel." That is why the story of Elon and his father cannot be understood only as a private family disagreement. It becomes part of the rhythm of his life. The impatience, the hunger, the way he can speak about the future as if time itself has offended him, the way he can appear both invincible and strangely wounded in the same sentence. There is an old kind of pain in men like that. Not soft pain, not the kind that asks for sympathy. Hard pain, productive pain. Pain that wakes before dawn, checks the numbers, pushes the engineers, sends the message, takes the risk, opens another company, starts another fight, because stopping would mean hearing the silence underneath. And silence, for a son who never felt properly seen, can be unbearable. Picture another imagined moment years later. Elon is not a boy anymore. He is the man reporters chase, the man investors fear and worship, the man employees study like weather. But he receives a message about his father or hears his name in an interview, and the old anger rises before he can stop it. Someone near him says, "Why do you still care what he thinks?" Elon almost laughs. Then he says, "I don't." But the room knows that is not fully true, because not caring is quiet. What Elon often carried looked louder than not caring. It looked like refusal. Refusal to forgive easily. Refusal to be ordinary. Refusal to lose. Refusal to let any man, even his own father, become the final author of his story. And yet the cruel thing about refusal is that it still points back to the person you are refusing. To say, "I will not become him," is still to measure yourself against him. To say, "I do not need his approval," is sometimes proof that the approval remains missing. That is the cage. A son may escape the house, the country, the family name, the childhood version of himself. He may cross oceans. He may enter rooms no one in his family ever imagined. He may speak of colonizing other planets. But the father can still appear in the smallest moments, in the tone of a criticism, in the need to dominate a conversation, in the refusal to look weak, in the fear that tenderness might be used against him. Elon's public life often looks like a battle with limits. Physics, oil, gravity, bureaucracy, public opinion, markets, sleep.
But perhaps one of the oldest limits was emotional. How much pain can a man convert into achievement before achievement stops working? Elon sits alone late at night after a victory that should have brought peace. A rocket has landed. A factory has survived. A company that nearly died is suddenly worth more than anyone believed. The people around him celebrate. Phones light up. Congratulations arrive from strangers, investors, fans. And still, one message is missing. Not because he expects it, because some part of him remembers when he did. He scrolls. Nothing. Then someone says, "You should be happy tonight." He does not look up. "I am," he says. But his face does not follow the words. So the work becomes shelter.
Work does not ask where it hurts. Work does not disappoint like family can. Work rewards obsession. It turns sleeplessness into headlines. It turns emotional distance into leadership mythology. It turns fear into a product roadmap. It gives a wounded son something to hold that will not look him in the eye and say, "Not enough." But there is a cost. Because when a man builds his life around not needing approval, he may also forget how to receive love when it is real. Compliments sound like strategy. Concern sounds like weakness. Gentle criticism sounds like attack. A quiet dinner feels more dangerous than a launch tower. That is why the title of this story matters. Babasila aynı masaya oturamayan adam. The man who could not sit at the same table with his father. Not because there was no table, but because between them sat everything that had never been said. The apology that never became complete. The pride that never arrived cleanly. The anger that disguised itself as strength. The sadness that neither man could hold without turning it into blame. And perhaps the most painful part is this. Both of them may have believed they were the misunderstood one. The father may have believed he made the son tough. The son may have believed he survived despite him. Between those two beliefs, a family can lose years. Between those two beliefs, a boy can become a man who has everything except the one simple memory he wanted most. That was when the world began to mistake motion for peace. That is why this story should not turn Elon into a saint. It should make him human. Because the most powerful stories are not about perfect people. They are about people who spend their lives negotiating with the parts of themselves they cannot outrun. Elon's relationship with his father is powerful because it reminds us that achievement does not erase origin. A man can stand beside machines that look like the future and still carry a past that feels older than language. He can speak of Mars while still feeling, somewhere inside, like a boy at a dinner table waiting for a nod. There comes a point when a son must decide whether the missing approval will be allowed to define the rest of his life. But that decision is not made once. It is made every day. In the way he speaks to his own children, in the way he handles failure, in the way he treats people who depend on him, in the way he chooses whether to pass the wound forward or finally let it end with him. That is the deeper emotional question behind Elon Musk's story. Not whether he became successful. That answer is obvious. The question is whether success ever reached the room where the hurt began. Maybe it did, for moments. Maybe not. Maybe a man can build rockets, change industries, frighten competitors, inspire millions, and still have one locked door inside him with a child waiting behind it.
And maybe the real tragedy is that the child was never asking for Mars. He was not asking for applause. He was not asking for a company valuation, a headline, or a monument. He was asking for something much smaller. A father who looked at him and meant it. A father who could sit across the table without turning love into judgment. A father who could say, "I see you." That is why the story stays with us. Because beneath the machines, the money, the arguments, and the empire, there is a wound almost anyone can understand. The wound of wanting to be loved by the person whose love seemed hardest to earn. And when you look at Elon Musk through that lens, the noise becomes easier to hear for what it may partly be. Not just ego, not just ambition, not just genius,
but a man trying, again and again, to become so undeniable that even the ghost of his father's disapproval would have to fall silent. Yet ghosts do not clap. They only echo. So perhaps the lesson is not that pain creates greatness. Pain can create motion, yes. It can create hunger. It can create the refusal to surrender. But greatness built from pain always carries a question inside it. What happens when the world finally applauds, and the one voice you wanted most still does not sound the way you hoped? That is the quiet tragedy of the man who could not sit at the same table with his father. Not that he failed, but that winning did not give him back the childhood sentence he had been chasing. And maybe, when the rockets rise and the cameras cheer and the world calls him impossible, some part of him still hears a small, empty space across the table. If stories like this remind you that even the loudest legends can carry silent wounds, subscribe for more hidden chapters behind the lives that shaped our world.